Good evening and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where tonight we'll be discussing the Bill P Horn Memorial Masonic Award Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com. Good evening and welcome back to the Working Tools Podcast. I'm joined this evening by our friends from the North in the Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon, Worship Brother Jarrod Dunham and Worship Brother Steven Chung. And I'm a Master Mason in the Grand Lodge of Washington, David Colbeth. And we're missing, again, our counterpart, very Worship Brother Appel. He's again out with family. And we're joined this evening, though, by a special guest and many-time guest, most Worship Brother Jim Mendoza, to talk with us about this neat award program, this neat medal for the Most Worship Brother Bill P Horn. And it's a unique program. As we were talking in the Blue Room beforehand, Most Worship Brother Jim indicated that a lot of the jurisdictions have some kind of a program like this. And so as a normal, we like to talk about the person. Tonight, it's not about Jim, but he's familiar with the program. He's familiar with Most Worship Brother Bill P Horn, the history of him, his bio. And so, Jim, if you wouldn't mind kind of talking to us about who Bill P Horn was as a man and then as a Mason, and why was he picked, or why is he so important?
Well, let's go back a little bit, because Bill Horn was a fascinating individual to begin with respect to someone who you would probably not expect to someday be Grand Master of Masons in any jurisdiction, let alone Washington. He was born in Indiana, and that's where he was educated. He was educated in the public schools in Brookville and studied architectural engineering at the University of Illinois. So one of the things that he actually was doing, despite his architectural engineering studies, was that he had a great love of the game of baseball, and he was actually drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals, and apparently he had a reputation as a long ball hitter. So the fact that he never made it, to the bigs, that's an interesting thing in and of itself. But his big thing was he loved being in construction projects and working on farms and ranches in the Midwest. And that's what took him in part to Puget Sound. He established his residence in Tacoma, which, for those people who aren't familiar with Washington State, you're usually familiar with Seattle. Tacoma is south of Seattle. He was employed by the DuPont Powder Company until the beginning of World War II. And at that point in time, he began service with the United States Marine Corps. He served with Company C of the 1st Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, and the South Pacific Theater of Operations. He was a recipient of the Purple Heart, among other military distinctions. He was often quoted as saying that there is no such thing as an ex-Marine. After he was discharged,
I'd be curious to know what the story is behind that Purple Heart. We may have to do some investigation there. I bet there's quite a story.
It normally, especially back in that time,
for sure,
because he was discharged in 1946, and when he came back, he was married to Mildred Eakin. And interesting thing about his wife, and probably what directed him into what he wanted to do in the area of construction, was that she was a teacher of the hard of hearing in the Tacoma public school systems. She spent a great deal of time furthering a knowledge of new and better ways of teaching, communicating with hard of hearing children. So like I said, he was involved in the building trades. He was employed as the chief building inspector of Pierce County and responsible for enforcement of building, plumbing, and zoning code regulations. He also became very active in the Association for Building Officials, serving as president of the Puget Sound chapter of the Northwest Regional Chapter and on the Council of American Building Officials. He was dedicated to his work on the International Conference of Building Official Code Changes Committee, who had a special interest in codes that recognize the unique challenges and requirements of the handicapped. And like I said, that's probably a direct relation to his relationship with his wife. So I like to tell people that when you see, especially in the state of Washington, when you see accessibility in buildings, when you see accessibility on the streets, when you even think about some of the stuff that's new that probably Bill Horn never even dreamed of, you can probably all attach that to Bill Paul Horn. So that's, so I think that's where a lot of what drove him comes from. He did join Freemasonry in 1943 at Fairweather Lodge, and was elected master in 1957. So along the way, he received multiple appointments. He was appointed deputy of the Grand Master in District 14, multiple chairmanships and services on committees as well. He was influential in updating the Lodge Officers Handbook at the time, as well as preparing suggested guidelines for floor work and the Lodge Officers Proficiency Exam. So he was really into enhancing the educational experience of the brethren. Of course, as it seems to be the case in our jurisdiction, he spent some time as Grand Lecturer, and in this case, 2 times as Grand Lecturer. And David will tell you that in this jurisdiction, in the Washington jurisdiction, if you're a Grand Master, in all likelihood, you probably spent a little bit of time as Grand Lecturer. We have this thing about wanting our Grand Masters to know the standard work and know it well. Bill was highly regarded by future Grand Masters, and one in particular was Most Worshipful Brother Bill Miller, who should be the one here talking to you about Bill Horn, but Bill is dealing with some of his own personal issues right now, and we wish him all the best as he recovers from those medical issues. But in 1990, Bill Miller announced the creation of a medal to be awarded by the Grand Lodge of Washington to a Mason of note on the world scene who has quietly contributed to the improvement of society. I think when you think about anybody who has influenced building codes to increase accessibility for handicapped individuals, as well as served as an inspiration for future enhancements to accessibility, I think you can see where someone like Bill Horn would be an appropriate person for which to name a medal. So that's where a lot of that came from. As an aside, I should point out that his wife created the widow's pin that we use here in Washington. So we don't call it the Mildred Eakins Horn widow's pin, but it is important to recognize that that she thought enough about thinking of the widows of our Masons that to give them something that could easily identify them for our brethren in the future. So that's that's kind of Bill Horn, and that's kind of where this award has come from. 1991. It was, like I said, it was in 1990. So it was an emergent resolution from then Most Worshipful Brother Bill Miller, passed by the Grand Lodge, and a committee was created to develop the criteria for who to pick, and then the process of how to pick. Along the way, some very distinguished brethren have received this. I was talking to David in the green room earlier about individuals such as Ronnie Seal, who has received the Bill P Horn. Brent Morris has received it as well. along with some of the more recent people. Boyd Patterson, past Grand Master of New York, of Texas. God, he'd kill me for that one. Most worship brother Rush Charvonia, past Grand Master of California, and most recently, Right Worshipful Brother Oscar Allen, the current Junior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of New York. For those of you who don't know who Oscar is Chief of Programs for the National Association of Counties and City Health Organizations. He has been on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19. So most definitely, and then of course his Masonic resume is longer than both of my arms. So you've got some pretty high-end people who have been so honored. And my apologies, I can't seem to find the list that was sent to me of all the individuals who have received this. It's a pretty distinguished list of brethren. It's like, wow, I'm on that list. That's kind of cool.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to having as many of the recipients as possible on it. I know we've been in communication with Right Worshipful Brother and Dr. Allen, and so I know he's been looking forward to being part of it. And boy, his involvement in all areas. I kind of said, hey, this will be an opportunity to meet even more awesome Masons, and what a legacy to leave and to promote, Bill P Horn and his legacy and his wife's legacy. And so I would imagine that Most Worshipful Brother Bill Miller's selection of Bill P Horn as the award namee, if you will, or the creation of it may stem from his educational background as well. So Bill P Horn's wife was in education, and so was Bill Miller as a superintendent, or was it principal?
Bill was president of the school board for the Frederick White Public Schools. Ironically, actually, this is a bit of fun trivia. Bill Miller signed my high school diploma when I graduated from Frederick White High School in 1981. So look at your records, brethren. I defy you to find any Grand Master sitting or past who had their high school diploma signed by a previous Grand Master. I don't think you're going to find that.
Well, as we like to say too, that busy people get things done and busy Masons get things done. And so Bill Miller, I was saying the other night that he's the busiest octogenarian that I know. We were trying to, again, hopefully he recovers well, and we wish him well. Trying to get him on here to record. He was always traveling somewhere. I'm over in this state, or I'm over in this state, or what. And so it was difficult to get him, and then to find out that he was tied up where he was, and hopefully he's home and recovering now. And so, and maybe we'll be able to get him on the show at some point in the future. In this series, again, we're kind of hoping to make this a bit of a series around the idea of Bill P Horn, the Memorial Masonic Award.
And Dave, when you think about about memorial medals such as this, because I mentioned this in the green room earlier, every Grand Lodge has a medal that's named after a Mason of some distinction. Sometimes that person is historically known, if not, worldwide, but at least in that jurisdiction, very well known. Other times it may be somebody that was very, very special to that particular person who created the medal, like Bill Horn was very special to Bill Miller. But I think it's important that when we talk about when these medals are presented, that we remember who they are named after, because they were named after that person for a reason. In the case of Bill Horn, because he was instrumental in, as I like to say, as I want to say, he was instrumental in improving his little corner of the world, and that is, improving accessibility for people who are not, fully abled. That's a big deal, and because he was also a member of a broader association of building code folks, that he was able to extend that beyond just Pierce County, which again is very huge. And it's important to note that, somebody like that's just not a name on a medal. Because on the back side of the medal, and if you'd let me just a second here, I'm going to share this image here. If you look at it on the backs, this is the medal right here, kind of in the lower part of the screen. That's his image on that medal. And of course, you get this nice little certificate here that says that you have been so honored. And there's a letter that comes with it that says that you were so honored. But medals are more than that are especially that are named after someone, are more than just the name and are more than just the picture. It's important that we know, who these people are. And so when we tell the story about who this person is and why it was important to name something after him, you get an idea that, yeah, this is a kind of a big deal. And then if you're so fortunate to receive such a distinction, and you look back at the list of people who received it before you, yeah, that even makes a bigger deal, because this is the company that you get to reside with. Every jurisdiction has something like this. And maybe sometimes it's not named after anybody. Maybe it has a generic name, like in the state of Washington, we have the Grand Master's Achievement Award. No names put onto it, but when you see someone with this white Washington pin with gold lettering on it, that person is kind of a big deal. And by the way, David happens to have one of those pins on his lapel. And you think about it, when you're in a position to name something after someone and to create a legacy, that person that you picked, no doubt, meant something deeply to you beyond just their resume, right? And that's so Bill likes to talk. That's why if you ever get a chance to talk to Bill Miller, he enjoys talking about Bill Horn. It's kind of a big deal for him. Oh, good. And here's the list of people there. And you see some pretty high end names here. I'm just going to quickly go through it here. Robert Davis, who is actually currently the Grand Master. I think he's currently the Grand Master of Oklahoma. Pretty big deal there. Ernest Borgnine, of course. Richard Fletcher, who was the director of the which one is it? Yeah, the gosh, what is it? Now I'm lost. I can't remember what he was the director of. Thomas Jackson, one of the most learned Freemasons out there, with respect to what's happening in the world of Freemasonry. And I previously mentioned Boyd Patterson and Ronnie Seal. Both of them are there. There are several distinguished Scottish Rite Masons on here. George Seeger, who was the director of the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Virginia. This is a distinguished list, and again, like I said, to be able to have your name on this list is a pretty big deal.
Most worshipful, you mentioned that you were fortunate to be able to recommend Most Worshipful Brother Russ Charvonia for nomination, and it sounds like there's a process to it. Can you speak in? We got about 10 minutes or so here.
Sure.
Can you speak to the process a little bit? How that happens? Is just as Grand Master you get to choose them, or is it committee? You mentioned a committee.
Let's start with the committee. The committee is comprised of brethren who travel. All right. It was mentioned that Bill is a very active octogenarian because he does a lot of traveling. He meets a lot of people. So in many cases, he knows these brethren individually. He knows them on a very personal level. And the other members of that committee also travel, and they get to meet a lot of people. And so typically speaking, what happens is they all get together and they'll come up with a name. What also can happen is that the Grand Master is asked. In my case, I was asked, do you have a recommendation? Yes, any Grand Master is going to have a little bit of weight in those discussions. And and of course, when I was asked, my recommendation was Russ Charbonnier, because of his work in the promotion of civility as as something that Masons should be attached to. His civility project has a reach over the United States, and there are several jurisdictions, and Canada, yes,
and into Canada. We actually just had our monthly Zoom meeting last Monday, where our director of education did this piece on civility and used his work and had it up on a PowerPoint and whatnot. And the name you're putting on is, hang on, scratching my head. Yeah, that's the guy that we were talking about, or that built that presentation that we all witnessed, and it was very well done. Normally we have our Zoom meetings, and then it's a month before you hear from anybody else, right? But I've had several messages in the past week about the content and how timely it was, and how everybody appreciated that. Which doesn't happen on a regular basis. So it speaks volumes to the content.
Yeah. So one of the nice things is that the medal was funded originally by a donation, and then its ongoing funding was created by a Grand Lodge coin program, where a likeness of the sitting Grand Master along with his logo and motto are put on a coin and then sold, and proceeds of the coin sale go to help fund the Bill P Horn Memorial Medal. Because one of the things that the committee is like to do is they like to bring the recipient to the Grand Lodge of Washington to speak at our Grand Lodge. And again, that kind of drives it home. Okay, who is this person? This person obviously is more than a name. So what is he all about? We've been fortunate to have, at least to my count, at least as long as I've been attending Grand Lodge and paying close attention, we've had 4 brethren come to our Grand Lodge who are recipients to address our Grand Lodge, and that's kind of a big deal. If memory serves, Ronnie Seal has visited us. Boyd Patterson has visited us. The brother from the Philippines has visited us. And let's see here. Russ Charbonnier has visited us, and David Worrell has visited us as well. We are hoping to have Oscar Allen come visit us. And the thing is, we pay for their way. Here's a plane ticket. Come and talk to our brethren. And it's really nice to be able to hear what these brethren are all about. It's, because it's one thing to read a resume. It's another thing to be able to have the opportunity to talk to them and for them to share with us. So that's, and what it does, it's just like anything else. Whenever you see a Mason of note, it is inspiring. It is inspiring to see see and hear from such individuals and say, yeah, that's somebody is very deserving of this recognition. And I'm glad. And if you're like me, you're glad that your Grand Lodge takes the time to recognize that there are brethren on a worldwide stage who are taking the principles of Freemasonry and taking them outside of the 4 walls. All too often, we have far too many brethren, in my viewpoint, whose Masonry begins when they walk into the lodge room and ends when they walk out. And so to see these brethren on a very large stage, at least larger than stages that most of us are used to, talking about the topic that is of a hot button issue to them, and using the principles of Freemasonry to share why this topic is important. And it also shows us as a fraternity in an outstanding light. because when we can point to any one of those individuals, and all of those individuals I know identify themselves very openly as Masons. They don't hide. They you know that they are Masons. If you read any of their bios, you're going to see a blurb about the fact that they're a Mason. And that's a big deal. And when people get to see that those people are out, those Masons are out there talking about these issues, right, in a non-Masonic setting, that I believe that casts us in a good light. And because it casts us in a good light, I think it speaks directly back to the medal, that the medal recognizes that there are brethren out there. And I know that at least the recipients that I've met personally, they consider the Bill P Horn and the Bill P Horn Memorial Masonic Medal one of their treasures in life. And that makes me happy, because again, it's important that Freemasonry recognizes those brethren who are our best, who shine our light in the best manner possible. And to be able to have somebody who probably would, again, his big thing was just trying to make things just a little better for people who were having struggles. That, keep in mind, this was back in the 50s and 60s, right? Nobody thought about that kind of stuff back then. He was.
And
thought about that stuff back then.
And not many people who do think about that stuff speak up about it, or did speak up about it. So that's nice to hear. It's inspiring to meet someone like that. I'm sure anybody who's of that quality. I know that certain people like that, they leave an impact, an impression on you, and it's obviously done a lot of good for yourself.
Mm-hmm. You know, and quite frankly, if we really think about it, Bill Miller would be, I don't think anybody would argue if Bill Miller would receive the Bill P Horn Medal. He never will, because, you know, part of the thing is they'll never recognize anybody in Washington because it's, you know, but when I look at people that I know on a worldwide, who make a difference on a worldwide stage, I think of Bill Miller. You know, this is a man who's been instrumental in, you know, training deputies of the Scottish Rite, those brethren who might be recognized as SGIG someday. He was key on the development committee to help raise money for the improvement of the building in DC. Yeah. Of course, he'll never get the medal because he would turn it down in a heartbeat. Because that's what I know about Bill.
You know, it's ironic. When I first heard about it, I was thinking, "Oh, this is the Bill Miller Award," and I just didn't. It took a little while. One of those things where I thought, "Wait a minute, this is a different name, a different guy." But you're right; it could be either named after him because of his excellence, or it could certainly be given to him. Yeah, it's certainly one of those things. And we are, I know I am anyway. I'm sure Jarrod and Steve, and I know Matt in the wings is a little bit giddy to be able to interview these guys. We were fortunate to interview Russ Chervonia last June regarding his civility program. I'll try to remember to put the links down in the show notes, but so some of these guys are just amazing. And we're trying this year to do a series of shows on things. Of course, we started off the year with Most Special Brother Jim, and his series on the blunders of Masonry was excellently received and got great reviews and discussion. And so this will be another series in our programs this year. And so we hope that you continue to look for the next several. We should have hopefully another 6 or 12 shows with some awesome Masons around the country and around the world as we continue to talk with guys about the Bill P Horn Masonic Memorial Medal. And so thank you most much for Brother Jim for coming this evening and talking with us. And
My pleasure.
And we look forward to our next show with you, which I'm sure will be just around the corner on some topic, because we just can't get enough of you and all the other. We have several regular hosts, and Jim has been so fortunate, so generous with us and being part of the show.
It's I'm glad that you guys are doing this. I think it's important to reach out as much as possible to the brethren and share with the brethren, some of the things that actually many of the things that you're talking about, simply because the fact that, again, in the spirit of Bill Horn, you may not think that what you're doing is going to have an impact beyond, your regular viewership. But what you don't see is how those viewers take what you talk about and translate it into making their Masonic experience, and not so much theirs, but for those around them, just a little bit better. So my congratulations to you for continuing to do this. And I'm looking forward to seeing more shows and maybe being a participant in something in the future. I can tell you it's been nice to be able to have something like this, especially in the pandemic, so that way Masons can talk to each other about these types of things. And hopefully, as we come out of this pandemic and then Masons are learning some of the things that they're learning on shows such as this, that they're able to improve the experience for everyone, just like Bill Horn did when he tried to just do something simple to improve the experience for those who would otherwise not be able to have the most positives of life experiences.
Well, and we definitely got to extend our appreciation for yourself, Jim. You've come on here several times, sometimes not knowing what we were going to really even have for content. And I know I remember the first time we asked Jim to do something, he was so hesitant. He wasn't so sure about this, but you liked the idea of what we were doing, and you got behind it, and you support us, and you continue to support us by your presence and your participation, and the wonderful content and contributors you bring to our podcast is very much appreciated.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. And I'll have to make sure I continue to wear more swag.
On that note, on behalf of Steven and Jarrod and myself, thank you for listening to the Working Tools podcast this evening. Have a great day.
Bye-bye now.